party, we like to party, party, party all night long. Party, party, we like to party, 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 never go home. Party, party, we like to party, party, party all night long. Party, party, we like to party, 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 never go home.
Poku, 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 Poku. Welcome,
What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 17 of the Ball Talk Pod. And if you didn't hear my co-host Chris, which I don't know how you couldn't, he was chanting Poku. And that is arguably the most fun player that's ever come through the Oklahoma City Thunder, Alexei Pokushevsky, the meme god himself.
Fun's relative.
I was once the president of the Poku fan club, and I say once, I still consider myself the president of that fan club.
You met him outside of Torchy's Taco.
Torchy's, yeah. Him
With
and
Micic.
Vasilij Micic.
Yeah.
Were there. Got a selfie with him. I think he could tell I was a huge fan. I told him best of luck this year, and then he was traded like 3 months later. So, hope he's doing well back in
Some are
Serbia.
saying that's why he asked for the trade out, because some guy was following around the Torchies.
Torchies. Yeah, thankfully I wasn't wearing a Poku jersey randomly on like a Thursday night in the Torchies. But we are dedicating this episode to the legendary Alexei Pokushevsky
The
for
man,
episode 17 of Ball Talk.
the man who got us Chet.
Basically. He deserves a ring if we get it.
Ty
But
Jerome tried to take it away, but Alexei Pokushevsky
Poku was too
decided
powerful.
He was too powerful.
Poku was too powerful and led the tank
That's right.
to get us the studs that we know now. Those studs, Chris, have led the Thunder into the All-Star break with a 44-10 record,
Ooh.
and things are looking pretty good.
Things are looking really good on the court. I agree. Yeah.
At least in the fact that everyone's healthy currently. We're still waiting to hear on Caruso. He got a little nicked up in the last couple games before the All-Star break, but again, he's gotten nicked up. It feels like every game.
What about
Every
Kaysen?
other game. Kaysen, I think it was a huge. We still don't like. They haven't released an injury report. That'll be tomorrow.
Gotcha.
Because they always release it the day before a game and then update it periodically throughout the next 24 hours. Kaysen, I think it was a big thing that he went to All-Star Weekend to do like media day and hang out for the Rising Stars Challenge. So I do anticipate, even if he's out a little bit to start this, I keep on wanting to call it a second half, but like this back end portion of the schedule. If he's out even a few games, I wouldn't worry too much about him.
It's just weird how he had an injury designation of a shoulder strain, and then
Was questionable for a game.
questionable, and then everyone was kind of out, so you kind of thought it was just because
I think it was the Bucks game.
it was because the Bucks decided they weren't going to play Middleton, who they then traded, who they weren't going to play
Giannis.
Dame, Giannis, Brooke Lopez. So you kind
Bobby
of thought
Portis.
that it was just everyone saying like, "Hey, we're just going to rest our players that are a little nicked up."
It was Dub, Kaysen, and Caruso were all questionable. They all got moved out whenever that got updated on the Bucks
Right.
side. We played later that week against the Heat. I think it was the Heat. I might be getting the games mixed up. But regardless, the next game, Caruso and Dub were off the injury report, available to play, and Kaysen got downgraded to out from there.
Right. Just weird. So that's
Hopefully it's
in
just
the back of my
precautionary.
mind. That's in the back of my mind. But
Especially with how he left. It was, they said, like you said, a shoulder strain. And you were at the game. It was the Kings game, I think, on
he just
Saturday
kind of
night.
disappeared.
And not even up the players' tunnel. I think you said you noticed that he went out the side tunnel.
Well, it was
Where
my
they done-
wife. Shout out my wife. She's always
Shout
got
out
her
the
eyes
wife.
on the bench, but she said that she just saw somebody in a blue jersey or whatever jersey color we were wearing that day sprint down the tunnel, and trainers follow.
There was only one person that could have been at the time. But
And
yeah, again, I don't think it's a huge deal, especially because there hasn't been any kind of update. As long-term
that's
injuries
true.
have come up, obviously Chet's injury got its own press release. Hartenstein's hand, and then even when he missed like 7 to 10 days for that calf strain, they had a release for it, and they haven't
right. You're right.
done anything.
That
AJ
does
Mitchell
make me
also
feel
had
better.
it.
Yeah.
So if it was more serious, I think you would see some kind of press release, which
Yeah.
is great news. Because honestly, him and Caruso, knock on wood, are the last two pieces of the puzzle in terms of getting a healthy roster together for these last 28 games.
You're forgetting about AJ Mitchell.
I am, but I still think in the playoffs, he's kind of a break glass if necessary kind of thing.
Okay.
I think he can contribute, but the rotations in the playoffs shrink down quite a bit. And we have, 12 guys right now that could technically be in a playoff rotation, but in any given series and any given game, I could see us playing more like 8 to 9, depending on where we are in that series, if it's gone 6 or 7 games.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, sorry to AJ Mitchell. We will
Sorry, Vin
include
doesn't
him.
believe in you.
I'm just a big Poku guy, man. He took Poku's spot. But I was looking back. The Thunder currently are tied for the best record in the NBA at the All-Star break. That is one of the reasons why Mark and the coaching staff, not even one, it is the reason that Mark and the coaching staff were coaching the All-Star game last week. But I wanted to go back and look at what the teams that have been leading the league in terms of best record at the All-Star break the last 5 years.
What they've done.
What they have done in that time. So when looking back, currently right now, the Thunder are the number one, have the number one record, tied with Cleveland at 44-10. Last year, in 2024, the Boston Celtics had the best record in the NBA at the All-Star break. The Thunder were third that year, but the Celtics did go on to win the NBA championship. So good news for Thunder fans if you're only basing it off of 1 year of data.
That's one on the chalkboard. Yeah.
When looking back 2 years ago, so the 22-23 season, the team leading at the All-Star break were the Boston Celtics again with a 42-17 record. They lost in the conference finals to the Miami Heat, with the Denver Nuggets going on to win the championship. The Nuggets had the third best record that year at 41-18. So they were like a game back, but still the best team with the team with the best record did not win that year and did not make the finals. Going back the year before, and when doing this exercise, it was kind of fun to see how much the NBA's landscape has changed in the last 5 years in terms of which teams were this high. Because in 21-22, the Phoenix Suns had the best record at 48-10.
Yeah, that was the Chris Paul iteration, correct?
Yep.
Chris Paul, Devin Booker. The year
team,
after he left Oklahoma City?
The second year. The first year they made the finals, and then the second year they had the best record in the NBA, and then lost to the Dallas Mavericks, the Luka-led Dallas Mavericks, in the conference semifinals, where they barely could score a bucket. Dallas won by 40 in Game 7. But the Suns had the best record that year. The Golden State Warriors, who had the second best record, won the NBA Finals that year. So moving on to 2020 to 2021. So this is the year post-COVID where the NBA didn't start until Christmas Day or around Christmas. And so there weren't as many games played that year. This was when fans weren't allowed in the stands or anything like that. But the Utah Jazz had the best record in the All-Star going into the All-Star break.
That's insane.
That's what I'm saying. It's crazy how much things have changed.
Who was on that? That's Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell.
Yep.
Not even Lowry Markkanen was there.
Nope.
Wow.
Lowry was not there yet. What's crazy is the Milwaukee Bucks won that year. They won the championship. This is the year they beat the Phoenix Suns. The Bucks had the 7th best record at the All-Star break that year. And I think it's kind of an asterisk on this one just because they were only playing 35 to 40 games at the All-Star break at this time instead of, Thunder played 54. Yeah. So they were 5 games back of the best record with the 7th spot. And then looking at other gaps from the years prior, it was 6 games, 7 games. There were longer gaps between first and second in those regular seasons than this COVID year. But the Bucks have that. And then lastly, the year that the Thunder had Chris Paul, the first year post Russell Westbrook and Paul George, the Milwaukee Bucks once again had the best record at the All-Star break at 46-8. Bit of an asterisk here as well, because this is the season that got bubbled. And the NBA shut down in Oklahoma City thanks to Rudy Gobert. And the Los Angeles Lakers went on to win the NBA Finals. Now, they did have the second best record, so it's not like it was just crazy. But I definitely think the Lakers benefited from that bubble run. Not only did they benefit from it, they won the freaking championship. But I think it was in their favor.
Let's put an asterisk.
Agreed. LeBron's never won a championship in LA. Neither has AD. But yeah, I don't think it's anything crazy to take from this in terms of, there's only been one team with the best record that's won it. And if that's true, then let's say the Cavs have the best record. And we'll go win it.
Yeah. I like that. Regardless of what happens, we'll just say the opposite, right? It's the Cavs. Cavs have the best record, so you can't. They're not going to win, But what it tells me is that it's important to play well before the All-Star break. It's not like the NBA, unlike maybe baseball, where you're kind of like just playing a bunch of games. You're trying to win baseball, but at some point during the baseball season, it's like all hands on deck. We need to go win some games.
Just get in the playoffs and have a chance.
Right. Which I think is true for any sport. I think
it's harder in basketball, though. I mean, I think the cream rises to the top more in basketball compared to other sports.
Right, which is sort of my point. I think it shows the trend is just that teams who play well the whole season are more likely to go on and win the championship. Not to say that because the Thunder have the best record at the All-Star break that they're 100% going to go win the championship.
Because there's only been 1 year in the last 5 years where a team outside of the top 3 records at the All-Star break did not win the championship, and that was the Bucks.
And it was
they won it.
And it was it was a abbreviated season, lots going on, no fans. So
yeah,
cool. I mean, very fun exercise. Kind of it makes you excited about the second half of the season. So
So as I mentioned, they are 44-10 currently, tied for the best record in the NBA. I remember I got their over-under wins total at 56.5 for the whole year. And this was preseason, even before Chet's injury. If you had to guess right now, they're 20-8. What would you anticipate their record looking like right now after these next 28 games?
They have 28 games left.
Yeah. And let me give you some context here.
Okay.
The Thunder last year.
Actually, don't want context.
You don't want?
I don't want context. No. I'm going to shoot straight from the hip.
Okay.
I'll probably shoot your eye out. I'll shoot your eye out with how good the shot is.
Try it.
Yeah. Mark this down, and you can bring this up when I'm right. How about that? If I'm right, I'm not going to hear it.
We're deleting this podcast.
I'm going to hear it. Yeah. So I think the Thunder, obviously they're going to lose more games. They're not immune to losing games, even in the playoffs.
I don't have them going 72-10.
I don't, which is just like,
this is a biased podcast.
Well, at some point the toilet paper runs out and you got to wipe your ass, right?
That's fair.
So I think they win 20 more games. I think they lose 8 more games, and I think they're 64-18.
So, Chris, the context I was going to provide you.
Okay.
Last year, this team at the All-Star break, got it right here. They were 37-17. Respectful, they were third in the NBA in terms of records, second in the West. Post All-Star break, they were
37-17
last year at the All-Star break.
They lost 7 more games, and fans are freaking out about one loss this year.
Yeah,
we have lost all context. What this season? What seasons have been in the past?
It's championship aspirations in Oklahoma City. They like the pain that, and we can get into this later because we're going to go into some Twitter questions. But the pain we felt in the last 15 years of this franchise being close, we need one, and people are holding on to that.
Bills, it's gonna come.
I'd love to make sure we're not the Buffalo Bills.
I mean, that's fair.
I don't want to turn into them. And the only way to do that is to have great teams and go win a championship. But back to our point. last year, the Thunder were 37-17. They have the same amount of games left after the All-Star break as they currently do.
Is it always 28 games?
No, it's give or take a few games.
Okay.
But last year, this team went 20-8 after the All-Star break.
Oh, that makes me hate my guess.
You were dead on.
I would have changed it.
You were dead on. Because if they go 20-8, they'd go 64-18.
Right, I know that, but I thought you were asking me for what I think they're going to do this season, right?
Yes.
Not what. Okay. Then yeah, I'll stick with 20-8.
Well, and what's crazy is in terms of, there's even like bets online that you can bet that they're going to win 70 games, which is crazy. And the odds are long, so that's why they're there. They're trying to take your money. But this is a better team if you look at the schedule, there are some tough games left, but it's definitely not like, I think the Suns have a really hard schedule. They have the hardest schedule left in terms of winning percentage. The Nuggets have a hard schedule. The Thunder are kind of like middle to the pack. I have to go back and verify that, but from my understanding, they're about middle of the pack in terms of strength of schedule remaining. And they have a better team, quote unquote, healthier team right now compared to what the team was that got them to this record. And it wouldn't shock me if they went better than 20-8.
Okay.
So I don't know if I could go out on a limb and say they're going to be better or worse than this, but I kind of have them going like, you know what? Give me 23-5. Give me 23-5.
You think they're going to win 67 games?
Yeah. That's my prediction.
I mean, that's 67-15.
That's my prediction. Especially as the context to this that could derail it or even benefit it is that as you get into the second half of the season, if you're playing tanking teams, they're tanking harder than ever.
Yes. You'll see a lot more guys on the injury list.
If you are locked into their seeding, which I believe the Thunder are, it'd have to be just a crazy turn of events for them not to have the 1 seed, as they currently have, I believe, they currently have, an 8-game lead on second place. The Thunder could rest guys, and that could be a way they lose some games they shouldn't have. But I also think the reason why I err on them winning more games, one, the talent level's higher. The depth is stronger than ever. If you're sitting Chet or if you're sitting Hartenstein, you have the other one there to provide a big, which as long as there's a 7-footer on this team, they're dang near impossible to beat in the current makeup of the team. And because of there has not been that many, literally just the last, 5 games since the Heat game or the Raptors game when Chet came back, you have not seen this team be able to play together. And so if they're able to use these 28 games to try stuff, and even against bad teams, they might not want to sit people as much as they would in a normal year because they need to see how Chet fits next to Hartenstein. They need to see when the second quarter starts and Shea's off the floor, what's the best combination next to Dub so that second unit doesn't, flounder as much as they have been offensively. Is it Hartenstein? Is it Chet? Is it both of them? Just all of those lineup configurations that they still need to work through. I just think they're not gonna, quit on this year in terms of like coasting because their seeding is locked in and it doesn't matter.
Yeah, you're talking me into it. You're doing a good job.
I didn't think it'd be hard.
No, well, yeah. I'm pretty
coming from the man that I think has penciled OU into the playoffs next year. And if he hasn't, just give us
coming out of camp. We just hired Kevin Wilson. I'm liking what I'm hearing out of camp, Ben.
Exactly. We're like 3 months away from Chris betting on OU to win the championship.
No, I don't bet on my teams.
That's fair. But that is kind of my thought on why I think this team could even go out and surpass what they did last year, which was the 1 seed in the NBA. They were tied with the Nuggets, but they had the tiebreak. Tiebreakers are kind of irrelevant this year because of that gap in the standings already. But I just think there's too many things they have to work through with their roster and their lineups for them to take as many nights off as you would normally see from a 1 seed as they prep for the playoffs.
Yeah,
you got to get Chet in shape.
It'll also make for more entertaining basketball from a fan for Thunder fans who might not want to catch the next game or go to the game, because they're going to sit people, but really they are going to be experimenting a lot like Ben's talking about. So it's going to make for really interesting basketball.
There will not be a game the rest of the year where there is not meaningful experimentation by Mark in terms of trying to figure out what looks best in May, April, and June, whenever they're in a 7-game series. 100%. Which is super exciting because usually as a 1 seed, I mean, even now I'm kind of like, I can't wait to get to the playoffs. But now I'm like, hold up, let's work through some stuff first, which we have the opportunity in these 28 games. So with that discussion wrapped up, let's see here. One thing I wanted to touch on before we rolled in to the Twitter questions that we had some people submit via X. I wanted to touch on one other thing that I think the Thunder should be looking out for. Excuse me, not necessarily the Thunder, but maybe Thunder fans that they could monitor on top of how the team's doing and who they might play in the play-in and things like that.
Sure,
the Thunder, we're talking the draft, the NBA draft.
Ben, let me tell you what day it is. It is February 19th. We haven't even played a game after the All-Star break. We don't necessarily have a lottery pick as of yet. But I'm excited to hear where you're going with this. So that's the context I want you to have when looking at the draft.
It's adding to that context. It's one of those things where the Thunder are in such a great spot. This can only benefit them. There's not really a negative to how this could play out. Obviously, there are situations where things roll in a positive manner your way, but I don't think there's necessarily a negative situation here with the draft picks. So as it currently stands, the Thunder potentially could have up to 4 draft picks in the 2025 NBA draft in terms of first-round picks.
We have to trade them.
Now, not all of them will convey. And when I say they'll convey, a lot of times in the NBA now, protections are added to picks. And protections would be like a lottery protected pick would be if the team that we traded with, if their pick falls in the 14 spots that are considered the lottery, where you actually have a chance at the first overall pick, those are reserved for the 14 teams that do not make the playoffs. Not the play-in. It's the first through the 8th seed for the 2 conferences. Everyone that does not make that is put into a lottery system and ranked in reverse order in terms of odds to win the first overall pick. The Thunder currently have a Miami Heat lottery protected first round pick. The Heat currently in the Eastern Conference, let me see here. They're currently 9th in the Eastern Conference, which means they would be in the play-in. If they did not advance through the play-in, the Heat would keep their pick. Now, as Thunder fans, the best thing you could ask for is for us to actually not get this pick.
Right. I'd agree with that.
Because with these protections, if they're not conveyed, usually it's pushed back to the year after and so on until something happens that it's sent to the team that traded for it. The Heat's pick next year is unprotected if it does not convey, which means if they go 0-82 and get the first overall pick, the Thunder have it. There's literally no chance that the Heat could keep their pick. And with them trading Jimmy Butler, their roster construction, I don't think they're just a horrible team, but it's not a championship level team. It would provide the Thunder another chance next year to get a decently high lottery pick to add in a rookie that would be making a rookie salary and provide depth to a team that's about to get really expensive, as we'll talk about here in a few minutes. So as a Thunder fan, be rooting for, one, the Miami Heat to miss the playoffs altogether. They can make the play-in, but we need them not to advance past it. We have a Utah Jazz top 10 protected pick, which the Jazz are horrible.
13-41.
one of the worst tank jobs in the NBA as it currently stands. They're in year, I mean, we said it earlier, the Jazz were the 1 seed like 3 or 4 years ago. And since that time, they've been mostly tanking, and they still really don't have anyone on their roster that screams like a franchise player. So the odds of this not conveying, or the odds of this conveying to the Thunder are like slim to none's, putting it lightly.
Because it's a top, what you say?
Top 10.
Top 10 protected. Gotcha.
And then next year it would move to top 8 protected, I believe, which I'm going to be honest, I don't think they'll be out of the top 8 next year. And after that, actually, this pick goes away. So it's a pick that probably isn't going to convey regardless. But if the Utah Jazz somehow go on like a 15-game winning streak, that's awesome. Don't count on it.
I mean, they beat LeBron and the unbeatable Lakers.
I know. They already beat the NBA champions, according to Shannon Sharp.
Yes.
And then the other one, there's 2 more. The other one that kind of has, we should get it, but it won't be necessarily a great pick. We have a swap with Houston and the Clippers. Whichever pick falls earlier in the draft, we get that pick. Right now, both the Rockets and the Clippers are in the top 6 of the West. You're looking at like a pick in probably the early 20s at best. So basically you want the Rockets or Clippers to start losing. And in the West and how it currently is situated, I wouldn't hold my breath. We just know that's going to be a first-round pick. Lastly, and the juiciest one that a lot of people didn't even consider and something to even think about this year, we own the Philadelphia 76ers first-round pick this year. It's top 6 protected. Now, the Sixers have had a crazy bout of injuries this year, and they currently are the 11th seed in the East with a 20-34 record. Paul George is leading them to a 20-34 record at the break. They don't even have an all-star in the Eastern Conference. Tyrese Maxey probably should have gotten one. I think he was one of the snubs, but regardless, they have not been playing good basketball. I'm actually going to pull up Tankathon real quick. Sorry for the clickety clack right there. They currently do have the 6th best odds to win the first overall pick. Now, the odds and how this works out, like if you've been a longtime Thunder fan, you are familiar with Tankathon because you go in, press a button, and it gives you a random drawing of how the draft order could be. But I just hit Sim Lottery, hit it once, and the Sixers pick fell to 8th, which would convey to the Thunder. It would give potentially the defending NBA champions, knock on wood, a top 8 protected pick or a top 8 pick in this year's draft, which I'm going to be honest, I don't know if that's ever happened before.
No, that's crazy.
So I think out of all those 4 picks, I went a little longer than I wanted to on that, the 76ers pick is definitely the one to keep your eye on the most.
Hope they lose, but not too much.
We need them to win a little bit. Because honestly, if they are, I would rather it be like a 10th or 11th overall pick than it go into next year. Next year, it goes from a top 6 protected pick. If it doesn't convey, it moves to a top 4 protected next year. And I don't see Philadelphia having back-to-back horrible years like this.
I agree. That's kind of where my mind went as well.
So there's your NBA draft talk for February.
Well, I will say, it being February, you got me very excited about the draft in the fact of watching other teams kind of move up and down the standings. I do look at the standings a lot, just like whenever I can, and it'll be fun to kind of watch where the 76ers kind of fall. We want them to not make the playoffs, but not have great odds. You know, you want the Miami Heat to not make the playoffs, so you need them to start losing games, or just not do well in the play-in. So,
and the other picks are kind of irrelevant,
right?
in terms of how important they might be. You kind of mentioned it. There's no way we can make that many picks hypothetically if all 4 conveyed, which they won't. But 2 or 3 probably will. If that happens, you definitely see Presti either try to move up in the draft or what he's done so many times before, where he takes those draft picks and trades them to a team that's just has terrible cap space right now, needs a cheap asset, and tries to get a lightly protected pick from them 3, 4, 5 years down the line. And on draft night is when the next year, like right now, you can trade through 2031. On draft night, you are now able to trade for the next year's first round pick.
2032.
Yeah. So that 8th grader, hope he's getting his reps in.
Sam's
coming into the 5-time NBA champion Oklahoma State Thunder.
Yeah, Sam's going to be watching his tape. We're going to need him.
But yeah, I mean, obviously the Thunder are the main focus, but on nights they don't play, or if you're just bored and they're on the West Coast and you want to watch an Eastern Conference team, the Heat and the Sixers are definitely the two to keep your eye on the most.
Yep, 100%.
So with draft talk wrapping up, I think, Chris, are you ready to move into some Twitter questions?
Yeah, I definitely am. I think I'm going to have some scathing takes. Or not.
Interesting. So I put out a tweet yesterday and appreciate everybody who responded. It's been fun to interact with everybody on X.
Handle.
Our Twitter handle is BallTalkPod OK on Twitter. Give us a follow.
We're just okay. We're not great.
Yeah, we didn't want to put people's expectations too high.
In
terms of what they might find.
We want people to be pleasantly surprised.
Yes. Key to happiness in life, low expectations. You're never let down.
That's right.
Unless you're a Thunder fan. They better win the freaking NBA championship. I'm just kidding.
I bet that's a Twitter question.
So, first Twitter question comes from R_Shoemaker, who asks, assuming a fully healthy roster, what do you think the starting 5 will be as we enter the playoffs? You think Mark has a particular 5 in mind regardless of opponent, or is it matchup dependent? Chris, any initial thoughts on that?
Yeah, my initial thoughts stretch back to last year when he was sort of concreted into starting Josh Giddey, with the 4 guys that had started all year and played well, Josh Giddey not playing that super well. My thought is, I think this year he'll take a different approach. I think while it'll always be Shea, Dub, Chet, Dort, I think for a team that's maybe a little smaller, you're going to not start Hartenstein. You're going to start Aaron Wiggins. You're going to start
Kaysen.
You're going to start, I would say Caruso, but I don't think Caruso's only started once this season.
I think if it's not Hartenstein, it's probably Kaysen because he's who started the most outside of him.
I think Mark's going to be more flexible with it. R_Shoemaker. I think that it's going to be more matchup dependent, and I think that's good for this team. And I think that's kind of what he tried to do throughout the whole season. Mark's even said that if you don't know, in the NBA, you don't always, if you're at home, you don't always go away from your bench to start. You don't always come towards your bench at the start. It's chosen by the away coach every game. So he's taken the opportunity to make sure that we don't get thrown off if we've played where at the end of games we have the ball on next to Mark, next to our bench. We're playing offense that way. So I think he's going to he's done a similar thing this year in switching up the starting lineups, which will continue.
I'm going to say that I think it's Chet, Hartenstein, Dub, Dort, and Shea. And that is your starting lineup in the NBA playoffs, regardless of matchup.
Okay.
My reasoning, and I don't think you're wrong. This is just my...
I like when you disagree. It gets me.
Get you fired up. It's like My Humps by the Black Eyed Peas.
That's right. But I think of it through the context of Blades of Glory. Will Ferrell on the treadmill. Gets the people going.
Absolutely. My reasoning for it is, like you mentioned last year, Giddey was in the starting lineup, Josh Giddey. Hope he's having fun in Chicago. It took the team basically just playing awful outside of Shea's minutes and the Mavs completely leaving him alone in a playoff series for 4 games. Like, it was game 5 that they made the switch in the starting lineup. And they started Isaiah Joe instead of Josh Giddey and brought him off the bench for the first time in Giddey's career. Giddey had never come off the bench before that game. I think what you would see is you have that set starting 5, And then depending on matchups, you see either Chet come out early, Hartenstein come out early. The rotation will change in terms of where they play their minutes, how many minutes they play. I don't think it will impact the starting lineup unless someone finds an obvious flaw in that starting five that they're taking advantage of, and the Thunder have to make a switch then. But Mark loves playing his game and not adjusting to others. So I just think that he will end up keeping his starting five as is and then making adjustments throughout the game from there in terms of combating different matchups and things like that in a potential 7-game series.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's the same thought process. It's just he's going to try to impose instead of kind of allowing the other coach to dictate what he does.
Agreed. He's very stubborn, I think, in a good way. So,
right.
Thank you again, R_Shoemaker, for the question. Moving on to Matthew Ryan Rhodes, who has asked actually 2 questions. The first one,
only can answer one. Sorry about that, buddy.
Well, his second one, someone else also asked, so we will get to it. Matt's first question was, is this season championship or bust, or is this season NBA Finals or bust in your eyes?
I would say it's NBA Finals or bust. I mean, I want them. I want to say it's championship or bust, but crazy things happen in the playoffs. I don't know how you feel about it, but I think there's just any number of things that can happen in a 7-game series where some guy just like has an offshoot, like the team has an off shooting night for 7 days or whatever. So I would say it's just I think if you don't make it to the NBA Finals, you feel worse.
I agree with that. I was about to say, I was like, honestly, if they make the Western Conference Finals, because I mean that's a feat all in itself.
Right.
But with how good this team is currently and how good they've played with a non-healthy roster, I mean, people were talking about before Chet came back, the Thunder were good enough to win the West. Chet made them good enough to win the championship.
Right.
And if they're all playing well, it should be you need to get to the finals. And you're probably facing Boston or Cleveland or the Knicks, if I had to guess. All those are respectable teams. I would take the Thunder over any of them currently. Almost even not, like, obviously it's a biased opinion, but just with the current makeup and how teams have been playing, if you're working Chet back in, it's a very hard team to beat in a 7-game series. I agree with you in saying that it is not NBA Finals or bust in terms of championship or bust. It is. We need to make the finals for this city and fans to feel like this season was a success.
Unfortunately,
which is crazy to say.
That's the sort of expectation we have as fans now, because they've been so good, because of what they've done on and off the court to prepare themselves for both the game and then to play the game.
Agreed. He also asked in that tweet, and so he asked,
what's the second question? I was just joking. I want to answer all these questions. Give them to me.
The second one, do you guys foresee Presti signing a veteran to the roster if a decent option becomes available as the season continues in terms of buyout? Matt, the issue with that is the Thunder currently have all 15 of their roster spots taken. So they would have to waive one of their current players to sign a player on the buyout market. And I think even more importantly, what happened with Gordon Hayward last year, it doesn't make them afraid to do so, but it makes them very cautious in terms of who they would bring in to this team. And I just don't know if there's like an obvious hole right now that is like, okay, we need this kind of player. It would be just kind of adding somebody to add someone, in my opinion.
I think I don't want to speak for Matt, but I think maybe he's asking more along the lines of, do you think this would be a team that could use a veteran presence in the playoffs? Someone to lead them through the playoffs other than Shea.
Well, I think you have Caruso. I think Caruso's that veteran presence you have. He's won a championship. Now that was the bubble championship, but he still has been in the NBA for a long time. Hartenstein, although he's just 26, he has been in the league a decent amount. He was with the Knicks last year in the playoffs.
They went to the Eastern Conference Finals last year?
No, they only went to the semifinals. They lost to the Pacers in the semifinals.
Oh, right.
But again, I think even outside of like just having somebody on the roster for veteran leadership, this team is so tight knit and has a culture that is, I would argue, almost unreplicable across the NBA as it currently stands.
All about loyalty.
I just don't see a benefit. Like it would have to be just the most perfect situation, and they would also have to cut somebody to bring that person in, which is taking away from that group. I mean, even if it was like Ousmane Dieng, I think the guys really like him. He came in with Chet and Dub, but I think he's obviously one of him and Dylan Jones, I think, are the two guys that would be on the chopping block. But I just don't think you disrupt this team, in my opinion, as it currently is situated. And I don't think Presti will either, especially after he called, like he messed up on the Gordon Hayward situation, is what he said.
Right.
So thank you, Matthew Ryan Rhodes, for the couple questions. He actually asked another question in another tweet, but we'll come back to that in a second to match another one.
Just ask him again. Just ask that one now.
Well, no, it lines up with another one. I'm going to move on.
All right. I'm sorry.
So Alex Linton, at _ Alex Linton, asking, Wiggins greater than Dort? ? Would you take Aaron Wiggins over Lou Dort?
At this point, no. Because I think, well, I don't know. If you're talking about would I take Aaron Wiggins as like in the second unit, distributing the ball, making plays, scoring, I would take him over Lou Dort. Yes. But if I want someone to play next to Shea and Dub in the final minutes, it's Lou Dort. Just because you have who you're going to have touch the ball every time, it's Shea or Dub. Lou Dort is out there and he's a good enough shooter. He's shooting something like 40%. So I think it's all like, obviously it's all contextually dependent, but I think I would take Lou Dort in the final minutes of a game, trying to lock down the defender and allowing Shea and Dub to distribute.
I think they both play their roles very well, but I think in terms of what they bring to this team, if you had to choose one of Dort or Wiggins, I know the question is kind of who's better. I think Dort is more important to this team as it is constructed currently, just because in the playoffs, you have a guy who can lock down. Everyone always mentions about how defenses tighten up. And I think the refs kind of let stuff go a little bit more and let them be more physical, which plays right into Lou Dort's hand. And then, as you mentioned, he's a 40% 3-point shooter. That's arguably the most valuable position in basketball in the NBA outside of, having your generational talent leading your team.
Right. He's not only a 40% 3-point shooter. He's a higher volume than Aaron Wiggins is. Well, I guess Aaron Wiggins has been shooting more this year, but like during the playoffs, he was shooting five 3-pointers a game at 40%, and Aaron Wiggins he's not shooting at that volume last year. So, I think Lou Dort is a more important piece like you're talking about.
He's also he's played in the moments. He played in the bubble. He played in a game 7. He had 30 points in a game 7 guarding James Harden. He's played in the last year's playoffs. He was probably, obviously I'm trying to remember back a year ago, but I remember him being the second best player on the team outside of, third. I would say Chet played really well. But I think he was the third best player on the team last year, especially in that Mavs series in terms of stepping up and hitting shots when we needed to. So I just think he provides an attitude and a mentality that helps this team a lot. Wiggins has been on a tear, just insane basketball being played by him right now.
Yep.
And I think another thing you could argue is if you were looking at this team over the next 5 years, I think Wiggins is more valuable than Dort just because of his contract.
Yeah. I do conceive of a world where the Thunder keep Aaron Wiggins over Lou Dort because Lou Dort goes and gets a $50 million contract somewhere.
Yeah, Dort only has, I think he has 2 or 3 years left on his deal. I remember at the time it was like, oh, they're overpaying for Lou Dort. It's like, well, not necessarily. And we also had the cap space at the time because no one was really taking up a big contract. Shea hadn't really even signed his extension yet, or had just maybe signed his extension. But let me see how many years Lou has on his contract.
No, I don't know. Wow.
So he signed a 5-year deal. And he currently has 2 years left on it. One of those years being a team option, which I don't think there's any chance the Thunder don't take that up. Because it's only $17 million as the cap spikes. That's going to look more and more valuable, which was the point made whenever this contract was signed back in 2022. It might look like a lot now, but then as you've seen other contracts come out, people are overpaying for not just any player, but they definitely would overpay for someone of Lou Dort's abilities. And as we mentioned before, Wiggins is on a descaling contract. So as his team gets more and more expensive with all these extensions coming up, Wiggins' contract gets more and more valuable each passing year. So yeah, I think in terms of this year, it's Lou Dort. But I think in terms of the next 4 or 5 years, it's Aaron Wiggins.
Agreed.
But
a better basketball player, Aaron Wiggins. More important to the team, Lou Dort.
I would agree. Anytime I see Lou Dort try to break a guy down, I'm like, he's going to lose that basketball immediately.
It looks like he's like going to either dribble the ball through the ground or dribble the ball through the guy's chest. Yeah.
So yeah, there's our Wiggins Dort take. Shout out to @_Alex Linton for that one. And lastly, for our last Twitter question, Matt Rhodes asked about this, and so did @GWalls24. They said, what do you make of Shea parting ways with his agent? Is that relevant? And Matt asked, what are the pros and cons of it? And how does that fit into the future of Oklahoma City or elsewhere at the end of his contract? For those that don't know, it was announced last night by Chris Haynes that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had parted ways with his agent and is going to represent himself in terms of basketball negotiations. He's keeping an agent, though, for like sponsorships and off the court stuff. But what did you think when you saw that, Chris?
When I immediately saw it, it's like, I don't love that. Like, I don't know why, but I immediately thought it was like this was a move to like maybe not sign an extension. But the more I think about it and the more I hear about it, it's the easiest contract ever to sign. They're going to pay him so much money. There's no like, well, you didn't do this, aren't doing this for the team. He's doing everything he should be, everything he can be. It's like, why would you pay some of those agent fees for, $82 million a year when you could be keeping like $8 million or whatever?
I think when looking at this, I think it's even more of a positive thing towards his time with the Oklahoma City Thunder, as you mentioned. Why would he need an agent if he already knows what he's going to sign?
Yeah, 100%.
And with the cap increasing, when Shai hypothetically signs this extension, towards the end of the contract, when he's making the most money possible, it's $82 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
And people say that agent fees are anywhere between 1% to 4%, depending on how big of an agent you have, what you agreed to. But I mean, if that last year, if he signed this extension, knew what it was going to be, if he was still with that agent, just that year alone would pay his agent $3.2 million.
Good to be his agent.
4%.
Yeah.
Honestly, this is terrible for his agency because they're about to cash in.
I'm sure they're not very happy.
And I don't know if they're also the ones that will keep his off the court stuff in terms of Converse and other sponsorships that come up. But to me, this is a great thing in terms of knowing he's going to sign. He's even said this year that he doesn't see himself anywhere but Oklahoma City. I know we're a little bit gun shy because
heard that before.
Paul George is here to stay. Him and Russ can bring this home. They brought it home to LA, and that's it. They didn't even bring it home to LA. They just went home to LA. But I actually really believe Shea when he says it. I think the biggest thing in all of this is the connection and transparency from the ownership to the GM to Shea. And you can throw the head coach in there too, but I think Clay Bennett and that ownership group, but mostly Clay Bennett, Sam Presti, and Shea have a vision for what this team can look like the next 5+ years.
Right.
Shea so obviously wants to be one of the best basketball players of all time. And one of the best ways to get there in terms of getting into that discussion is, one, obviously winning MVPs, which he should win his first one this year. Even winning one just gets you in the conversation of one of the greatest ever. And then secondly, and arguably the most important, is championships.
Yeah. I would also throw in, when you think about the guys who are like the greatest of all time, you don't think of them in a lot of different jerseys. Like,
correct.
When
Kevin Durant's almost like taking a step back in those discussions because who's going to retire his jersey?
Right. 100%.
Like, where is his home?
You know, Kobe never went to a different team. You know, you think of like, well, I'm sure there's guys at the back, but you know, you think of them on a single team. I know Jordan. LeBron is sort of a misnomer, but when you think about him, I think about him on the Cleveland Cavaliers. And so I think a part of that is the loyalty to a fan base that allows you to ascend, like just the greatest basketball players. It allows you to ascend above them.
And you grow with that team and the players around you. To be considered one of the greatest of all time, you kind of need a team that wants to retire your jersey.
Right.
And like you mentioned, Kevin Durant, I think Golden State's going to retire his jersey at some point, and I think there will be a conversation in Oklahoma City to retire his jersey. It would be kind of crazy for a player to win the MVP for a team and them not have their jersey retired.
It'll have to be in like 50 years, though.
It'll have to be like 10 years after Russell Westbrook has like passed away. Like Russ has to live out his life, and then like we can consider KD's jersey.
Kevin Durant is going to be pushed out there in a wheelchair.
Yeah. Or like post whatever. I can't even say the word.
Never mind. We don't need to talk about that.
Yeah. Big words are hard. Small town boys here. But in terms of this agency thing, I view it as a positive. You know, he's going to, in my opinion, he's going to sign. And not only is he going to sign all in this offseason, he's going to sign his extension, and then Dub and Chet are eligible for their rookie scale extensions. So you're going to have your 3 best players locked up for the next 5 years, which is massive. And even even though they're signing the extensions, those high numbers in terms of their annual salary won't hit the cap sheet until a year or two down the road, because they'll play out this contract, and then that extension will hit after their original contract that they're currently on expires.
Is there a limit to the years you could sign Shea to? Like if we wanted to sign him for like kind of like baseball contracts, they're like 10 years long. Can you sign Shea to like a 7-year extension where you're paying him, $80 million, but the 5th year you can reimagine the contract if the cap goes up exponentially and he should be making like $100 million? You're muted. I can't hear you.
Sorry. I was typing. Didn't want to clickety-clack into the microphone. The NBA is different in terms of they have a salary cap. Like baseball, you can sign someone for 20 years. The NFL has a salary cap as well. So there are restrictions on the number of years you can sign someone for. So the extension that Shea is eligible for this offseason is a 4-year, $293 million extension, which would take into it would add 4 years to his current contract, basically. So it's really like a 5 or 6 year extension. Not even extension, just 5 or 6 years that he would be tied to Oklahoma City. The average salary of those 4 years, so it's not this is just the average, is $73 million a season.
Yeah, what's he gonna do with $73 million in Oklahoma City? Now, I don't think he will live in Oklahoma City after, so he probably needs the money just to buy a single level house in California.
Shea has a lot of hobbies outside in terms of fashion and all that I think he will find a way to use that money. Even if it's setting up, it's generational wealth. So I just think this agent thing is kind of weird. You've seen people in the past, whenever they leave an agent, it usually means that there's unrest and they're not doing what they want them to do in terms of either getting them out of their current situation, or like a negotiation isn't going well and they fire them, and then they, for some reason, seem to get traded in the NBA. This is Shea not looking for other representation. This is Shea saying, I'm going to do this myself. Right. Because I don't want to have to, and the thought is he doesn't have to pay someone $4 million a year for what he could just do himself, do without them.
Right.
So yeah, that's those are our thoughts kind of on Shea's agency situation. And again, he still has representation for off the court, but I would take it as Thunder fans as a positive towards him wanting to sign the extension and stay in Oklahoma City long term.
Mm-hmm.
But that wraps up our Twitter questions. Shout out to everybody who submitted a question. We'll try to do that once every week or two. So if you have any questions for us, want us to answer on the pod,
give them the handle again, Ben.
At Ball Talk Pod. Okay. Go ahead and give us a follow.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's our tagline now.
Give us a follow over there. Follow us on Spotify, wherever you listen. Give us a review if you want. But with that, the Thunder head into the again, not second half of the season, but the post All-Star break section of the season, with that 44-10 record, 28 games left, and then things get pretty serious in Oklahoma City when it comes to basketball. So yeah, it's going to be great. As we mentioned, these games do matter in terms of figuring out how this team's going to look come playoff time. And I'm just pumped to watch it all, man.
Yeah, let's go. Keep your eyes peeled, Oklahoma City.
Yeah. Appreciate everybody for listening, and we'll see you next week. See
you. Wow.
All night long.
Shout out.
Party, we like to party, all night long. Party, we